our eighth meeting on February 14th, review of work. This is what we're covering. And I think it's just really to see where we are as a way of benchmarking so that we know what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how and what needs to be done. So those three things. Again, it's not something that I think should take too long. So if I may suggest an agenda, we could go through, for example, um, let's say what we said we need to do from last time, what has transpired since last time, and then what needs to be done going forward. So those three parts. So in the first one, what we said we need to do, one thing I needed to do was to set up the minutes, which I've yet to finish. So I'll finish and then send them to you, so that you can see the minutes. The advantage of the minutes is at the end, I'm putting actionable work. The things we're supposed to do. There's actions for you and actions for me. So after every week, we have these actionables, and they're helpful in tracking what needs to be done and then cross checking what extent they've been done so that we can make notes of that. At least we don't leave anything behind. So that's how we'll be doing our meetings. All right. So I'm still behind on getting those minutes done. I don't have a good minutes creator. So I have to rely on a tool, which I find it to be very cumbersome. It's not straightforward. So, but I'll have it done. Then I'll share it with you. Then um, the, yeah, so the other thing that we needed to do from last week, if you remember, was that you were to send me the registration documentation you have for the company Chungunzimwa, so that I can use it to share with the people who I know, or at least who I've worked with. I don't know if they're still doing it, but I can share with them to see if they can help us to get this registered in the way that we were suggesting, social enterprise. So if you let me have it, then I can do that. So it's a reminder. That's one of the things we had to do last week. Another one of the things was for you to, so that there's accumulation of some things. On one hand, you need to identify the activities of program development for WIKA. Program development, based on how we've discussed, program development. So you need I have a strategy on that, big picture. And then small picture, you need to decide which program will start. An example of a program would be to work with a community, let's say, of victims who are, let's say, predisposed to domestic violence. All right? But the program will have its activities. Um, Classic activities would just be um, identification of the problem, identification of the needs based on WICA, and then identification of, you could say, stakeholders who can help to provide the solution, and then identification of, not even just identification, but um, you could say, to some extent, the involvement of stakeholders who would provide the solution. You see, so on one side that represents a program. You see, it has the victim, it has the stakeholders, it has the nature of the problem for these victims, it has the solution as would be suggested or provided by WICA, and it involves the stakeholders. So that's the program. But the program, in terms of workshops, because you have the program, but it has to be implemented, and the implementation of the program happens through a series of workshops. So you could have one workshop which would be an identification workshop, let's say a workshop of trying to discover the problem, and the problem and the need go hand in hand. So someone is saying this is the problem, in the same workshop you can discover this is the need. Of course, because of life and the way things are, there'll be layers of complexity. So the workshop can be all about unwrapping the problem, finding all the various problems, ranking them, number one, number two, number three, and then in relation to that, find the need. What does the victim need to happen? And in all that, we assume new things will emerge. But WICA has its prescribed solution through reporting. Okay, so but the workshop is purely to discover that. And you have another workshop, it's just an example I'm giving, where you now insert what we can argue is the, um, even in the first workshop, we'll insert what we're calling a proof of concept, which will help us to survey them. When we survey them, we can analyze the survey, and then, of course, we can proceed with developing a solution. So in the second workshop, we invite the victims again, and we now work with them with the solution in mind. But the solution is in its first prototype. So we will be testing to see to what extent the solution is working as a, let's just say, a value proposition to the victim, that the victim sees this is working. I'm giving that as an example. In the third workshop, you can have now the stakeholders, not the victim so much, and not so much our focus. In the third workshop, the focus becomes the stakeholders. So we invite them and we ask them what their issue is in relation to the victim. So once they state their problem, we now have a problem for the stakeholders, and they would be, let's say, 5 stakeholders, maybe 6. These are different categories, but we then develop for each one of them what we can say are needs. So let's say stakeholders in law enforcement would be people like police, it could be courts, like the court, it could be lawyers. Then you could have stakeholders in healthcare, you could have stakeholders in the NGO community who are concerned with education, but those are stakeholders. So we're saying, okay, so those ones, we need to discover what their problem is. And then we, in the workshop, craft, once we know the problem, we craft the need. Now, within that context, of course, if everything's orientated to the victim. Within that context, we will now develop a solution that is WIKA based. So in that workshop, we would insert a prototype for the stakeholders to help assess at least their needs so that we get their requirements. Once we know their requirements from their needs, then we proceed to develop a solution. And once we have that solution, we have a workshop for them to test that solution. So you see, for victims, we have 2 workshops, one for, you can say, needs assessment, and the other for testing the solution for victims. For the stakeholders, we have a workshop for needs assessment of stakeholders, and then we have another one for testing the solutions for stakeholders. So those are 4 workshops done. And they're based on the program. So the program is like the curriculum, but the curriculum is designed first before we implement these workshops. Okay? Then we move to the final category, which is partners. Partners are where we monetize. So it's very important to us because in order for all this to be sustainable, the partners have to accept. And what we're saying to the partners is simple. We're saying, look, all this activity we're doing with victims and all this activity we're involving stakeholders is helpful, let's say, to these communities. You can argue to people within the constituencies of interest of the partner. So the partner will say, okay, if you're working with these kind of people, we will fund it. Okay, so what do we get for funding it? So now that's where we start talking of the needs of the partners. The partners, we have to have a workshop that will establish their needs. And then from there, we develop what we call a problem needs statement. But once we know their problem, we know their needs, we'll again develop a prototype that will help us to capture their needs and then analyze their needs. So that is for the partners. So that's the same thing. Then we move to the next, we develop a solution, a WIKA-based solution for the partners, which will be all about crunching data, giving them reports in ways that make sense to them. Okay, so we give them that based on, of course, the victim and the activities of the stakeholders. So they have that. And that now becomes, you can say, our solution to the partners. Now, we test the solution with the partners because the partners are willing to pay. So those are 2 workshops again. So we have a workshop for partners. The first one is needs, let's call it problem needs assessment, where we have a prototype to capture and analyze their needs. Then we do a solutions workshop where we've already developed a solution and we test the outcomes of that. So that's the partners workshop. And there are 2. And Once we have developed the prototype in WIKA up to that level, those are 6 workshops, it is now in a state of readiness, you can say, to address the needs of victims, stakeholders, partners. And partners will be in a state of readiness to pay for the activities of WIKA based on the victims and stakeholders. And you can argue that that now turns things around. Of course, from there, we go back to, you can say, the general ecosystem, which has different types of victims, and we can discuss that. But it feeds back into itself, and we learn from its activities. So all these activities will teach the app, and then we go through it again. So that's the whole thing. And that's how we spend our 6 months. See, and there's 6 activities like so. So you need to develop these curriculums, which are, we won't call them curriculums, we call them programs, because we're not in an educational context. So since we are doing social impact work, they're calling it programs. So let's call them programs. We have to develop the program. It's like a curriculum, and it outlines all the stuff that you'd see in a curriculum. Things like the goal of the program, the outcomes of the program, the you'd mention things like the philosophy behind the program. If you want to think strategically, so maybe talk about the strategy of the program. Then you can talk about the method that we'll be using, like the one I've described, in order for us to understand how to implement. We need to talk about the assessment, how we're going to actually assess success within the program. Talk about the audiences. That's where you now have to structure the audiences. Even if we have to talk top level. So for example, you can say that we can target women from low income families, okay? And that's a particular category. But we can also talk of women from wealthy families, or we can talk about men, let's say boys in the Catholic Church, for example. And then we can also say we can talk about orphans in orphanages. So these are constituencies that we target. So it has to be brought out in the curriculum, because the curriculum has to have oversight of the target audience. And it has to specify, how do you pre-qualify to be in the program for WIKA? Because that's what curriculums do. You know, in our curriculum, it even says you have to have a C minus in mathematics or something to get into design. You see, so we have to be clear on what are the things that will pre-qualify anyone in the target audience to be part of the program. And there are 3 target audience groups. There's the victim, the stakeholders, and the partners. So we have to have program definitions for all of them. So you need to write that, even in its most crude way, but once you've done it, then we have that. And remember, it's implementing workshops. It's through those workshops that we're able to roll out. The workshop becomes you can say, launch pad for starting. But it's very strategic for us because it helps us to test our ideas, gives us feedback to develop solutions, but it also allows us to launch because you're talking to the real people. So you're able to launch with a small group. So that gives us a kind of, platform. So that program we've said we need to do, and you need to try to write one, however simply you write it, just to have it. But think through the key things, which are the touch point on the ground. The target audience, the stakeholders in the stakeholder program, and then in the victims program, you have to think specifically about the categories of victims. Remember, there are 3 categories we talked about. We have the victims who have actually been abused, but then we have those who are vulnerable. I mean, they are predisposed to being abused, and then there are those who are survivors. So we have those 3 categories, and then amongst them there are these constituencies, and those constituencies can go on forever. Because situations are different. I mean, you might find that if you go to Kakuma, a refugee camp, you might find audiences there. You see, but we can't know, but we need to at least think so that we develop a tall list of maybe 30 possible cases which are credible. And a credible case for us is one which will interest a partner. See, like Kakuma would interest, these NGO type, UN type organizations. But if it were, let's say, low income families in rural areas or communities, it might interest counties. You see, depends on how we look at it. Maybe there are some counties or some tribes where this problem is greater than others or serious. So we could see that as a target group, and then the counties there might be interested in investing in that. You see, so that's how to develop them because I mean, many people might be possibly affected, but we can't start with everyone. We have to start with where we can get money. So that's the whole thinking. All right, so you need that. I hope you're okay with it. I was just reviewing a summary, if it's okay. Yeah. Okay.
You share.
I'll share. Yeah. The minutes. Yeah. Okay. Then you have now. Okay. So that's program writing. So that's needed. The next thing that's needed on your side is the workshops. You see, the workshop is almost like a lesson plan. When you go to class, what are you doing? You see? So you need to have that lesson plan on which, if it was a lesson, you'd be specifying things like the lesson objectives, the lesson learning outcomes, but then you'd also write the learning activities. And if you have 5 learning activities, you'd write them down. And each activity has an assessment. So for each activity, you have to assess what it is that you're trying to do there. So that's the kind of thing we need in terms of in terms of um, the workshop plan. The lesson plan becomes the workshop plan. So you need a program for victims, and it should have its 2 workshops. And in each of those workshops, you need to have what you can say is a workshop plan, which is like a lesson plan. So they're fairly elaborate documents when you start doing these things. But you should have a framework just to start with, even if it's just a short thing. But we need to start. All right. Now, in each of those 2 things, particularly in the workshop, I would have now a WIKA prototype that will help with data collection at the workshop. The workshop has a part of it that is data collection. You see, so the activity that involves data collection would be based on the app itself. So we introduce the app, then it collects the data, and we'll crunch the numbers in real time. So we'll get some feedback, which we can use to reconstruct things at the workshop. But there is that moment where we collect data. All right. Yeah. So anyone who comes to the workshop, a WIKA workshop, will be exposed to the WIKA app. But there'll be a series of activities that lead up to that. So we have to determine what that is. Okay, so those are 2 things, and they're just documents you write, and it helps you to think. And don't you see? I'm asking you to write in a contextual way so that you're working with real communities that are on the ground in Kenya that we can target, and you're also working with real scenarios that they're facing, not artificial. Because when you're on the ground, you'll be faced with real situations. I mean, if you talk to people who are suffering from these things, you don't want to go above them or to be too abstract. You want to talk at the level that they're talking. So as much as you can empathize with their situation, you need to put yourself on the ground and in some way be able to write a document that's based on the real situation on the ground. That's how you have success. If it's too abstract, people will not relate with it, so it won't be workable on the ground. But if it's based on the ground completely, then it's workable. Then of course there's a good chance of success. Yeah. So that's how to kind of think and orientate your mind so that you're on the ground. Uh, yeah. So there's that. Then the same thing has to happen for stakeholders, and the stakeholders are many. They're like 6 stakeholders, and you need to cover them to the same detail that you covered the victims, and then comes the partners, and the partners are where we monetize. So you really have to be on the ground with them because they'll only pay for what they want and need. They won't pay for what they don't want and need. And some of these organizations will pay properly for them, or whatever it is we're giving them. But they would only want it the way they want it. So we need to design what we're designing with the partners purchasing in mind. Okay? But we shouldn't lose oversight of solving the problem for the victim. We have to align the victim's, let's say, interests with the partner's interests. We have to align them. They might not be always aligned, but we have to figure out how to do that. That's the challenge. Okay, so you can see what is involved on that. Meanwhile, I'll just be preparing the prototype. So that's the third item. So we have programs, we have workshop plans coming from you. Coming from you also, we need the draft for Chunganzima, the registration documentation, so that I can use that to upgrade it. And and then of course we the on my side I need to proceed with the prototype. So far, what I've done, I've costed the prototype, so we have a breakdown of the activities and the costs. I've um, laid out the prototype. You can say um, stories. So the stories are what give us the pop-up screens, the stories. But you might find that it takes 3 to 6 screens to make a story. So I've designed that. That's what I was presenting last week, and I have a breakdown of it. Now I'll do a demo, a rough demo of the prototype, which is called the proof of concept, which we can use for the first workshop to gather data. The stories for the first one, because it's all around, you know, it's all around needs assessment and requirements. You can say requirements of the victim. The survey goes hand in glove with the prototype. The prototype presents three screens, one, two, three. You click through them, and then it asks you 3 questions like that. So, based on the answers they give, we're able to analyze and know what we need to do in order to give them a solution that makes sense to them. See, that's how the design is of the prototype. So I've done the breakdown of the questions which I presented, but I don't think I've sent them. So I'll send them so that you see now the questions I presented, those survey questions, and then you'll also see the actions of the prototype. So the actions of the prototype stories are next to the survey questions. All right. So that's what I've done. Now, what I've done is abstract. What I've done is my imaginings of what I think is going on the ground. But you see, I'm not on the ground. So I can't claim any authority. I'm just imagining. I'm basing it, in fact, on what you tell me and maybe what I might read. So the reality, what will ground the app is now the program itself. Once we have that program outline, then we'll have a persona profile of the victim, and we'll know exactly what the victim is like in the different categories that exist. And then you pick one. We just pick one where we're going to start because it's a proof of concept. So we just pick one constituency, but we should show that there are many. So and then from the many we pick one, and then we go proceed with that one. That's when it looks like a document that it looks like a business. And then we're making a case that not only are we picking one, but if we're successful, we can pick the others, and then we grow in that direction. We can make a business case around that. Okay. All right. So I've not yet presented or prepared the prototype. It's like I was telling you, it costs money. So I have to organize myself to use money to build it until the money comes. So I've not had that. I've had some other mishaps. So those mishaps are the ones I'm now trying to juggle with. But if I get into a good position, then I'll just use my money and set it up so that we have it on the cloud. Then I share with you, and then you'll see how it looks. But in the meantime, we have the story, we have the questions, and that's for the first one. And then, of course, the second one will follow soon after that. So that's on my side. Okay. So that's part one, what it was we're supposed to have done. I don't know how you're doing. Have you haven't sent me the document yet. I've not seen it. You know the one with Chungazima registration, that one bad. When can you send that?
I'm trying to send it now. Uh,
Hmm.
I couldn't find it in the business registration because I lost the actual slip.
Yeah,
And now, since things went online, I've been trying to trace it. I've just found the company name, so I'm trying to get the details.
yeah. From eCitizen.
Ah,
From eCitizen.
yeah,
Okay.
and send to you because in the
Mm.
e-citizen I'd requested they transfer the name to me,
Yeah,
like the business name.
yeah.
I was updating something,
Okay.
so that's why I haven't sent.
I see. But when you say transfer the name to you, Right now, whose name is it in?
Because it's not showing that it's me, it's mine.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't, like, it's showing it's registered, but it's not showing by who.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what you're saying is you don't have a registration certificate for that.
I don't have. I'm trying to see if I
Mm.
can get an online
All right.
one.
Sure.
I can get one online.
Yeah. And do you have a copy?
No, I lost that thing. That's the thing. I don't know where it
Mm.
is at all.
Oh, I see.
And me, I
Even
don't lose things.
okay.
Mm.
All right. Again, if you have difficulty getting the existing registered document, um, send me an email on what you have, like the name, the way you spell it, like Tungunzima Limited or Tungunzima something something. Give me that exact name in writing, and any other info, and then give me your name, the one which you would have used when you were registering it, your ID number, these kind of details. Might even need your PIN number, so that I can also give to these guys to follow. Yeah, these are guys who work in Sharia house, so I can go to them and tell them that let's find this document. You see, if you can't find it on eCitizen, then you can give me that information and I can pass it to them.
I'll give you the details now.
Yeah. So yeah.
Actually registered this thing in 2010.
Okay. So if you have the registration information or any, even if you don't have the certificate, but you have the number or you have something, um, whatever you have will just help them to find it quicker. Yeah. Okay. So that's one which we want to get out of the way. Then the second thing is this one of the program. So you need to get your mind into this thing of writing the program and the workshop plan, at least for program number one, which is for, you can call it the victims program. And then you need to have there are two workshops for that, but they at least have one workshop ready so that we have a starting point in some ways. When these guys are asking for, the first milestone, um, that workshop one is testing. When they're saying they'd like to see a prototype, that's now what we'll show them. But it's more than just the product. The prototype is a report, the product, as well as the, let's say, um, information around it. The information are things to do like the program that you're writing, the uh, workshop plan that you're writing. We have a research document, which is testing, that testing report. It's a document, it's part of that. And then we have drawings. We have drawings that model um, WIKA to show them what the concept is. You see, so those documents, there are four of them, make up what you can say is the prototype. But the demonstration product itself, which is just click through six buttons, that's all. But it's the documents around it that make it half flesh as a business. See, so that's now what we need to have within 30 days once they disseminate cash. So that's now it's good to have a head start.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of the so do we touch base on that next week? Are you going to be able to present something on the program, the workshop plan, as well as, of course, what we're talking about, registration documentation, in the
Okay.
program? Yeah,
Can you send me the meeting minutes of this meeting? I will try my best
I'll send. Yeah, I'll send.
because I have so much to do.
Yeah,
I don't even know how to divide myself.
true, true. But this one, if you want to think about what you're doing, I'm not sure how serious you are with business, but you see, if these guys are saying to you that they're going to give you 3 million shillings to start your business, then it gives you something tangible to prioritize. I mean, what are you going to prioritize? This business can grow. Start 3 million is your starting point. Then from there, it will grow into what it can be. We're going to be making projections after 6 months on how much it can grow. But let's say it grows 10 times, then you're talking of 30 million shillings in the next round of investment. So it depends on when you're doing what you're doing, it's helpful to think, I think, in a way that improves your life's outcome, you know, because uh, there are very many things that takes an academic's time. I mean, it just takes your time. And if you allow those things to take your time, then the distraction is small. If you want to make money, is what I'm saying is, you want to make money, you have to give Caesar what is Caesar's, and you need to input, let's say, um, the things that are needed for you to make money, whether the time, the effort, the money, even the thinking that goes into it. And then at the end of that, you can expect to make money. It's like if you want to do a study, you have to input what's needed to do the study. And at the end of it, you produce the outcome of the study, some kind of report, you see. So that's how to prioritize this thing, or how to position it. How much do you want to make money through WIKA? That's the question. Then you can know how to rank it. Mm, yeah. This field, the field of, you can say, um, software development, or software engineering, or even just interactive media design. But this field is hyper competitive. It's very competitive. So you'll see. I mean, the moment you're in a space where there are other apps like yours, and you're now trying to defend yours and put yours out there, you'll see how competitive it is. And then it's based on money. So nobody wants to lose cash. So anyone who invests is going to invest in the option that is likely to make money and not fail. So it has to be something that will convince investors who don't want to lose their money that they need to invest in your app. See, that's the next round of investment. It's not something you can do overnight in the sense of winging it. You go there on the night, then you wing it. No, no investor in his right mind. I mean, if an investor puts money into someone who's winging it, they would have lost the money long time ago. They'll not be in the game. But investors who are in the game, they're constantly investing. They know this one's winging it. We're not going to give them money. But they know when yours is on the money. They know when it's on the money, and they'll give money based on that. That's how to see this thing. It's high stakes because we're talking of millions of shillings. So why would anyone put their millions of shillings? Nobody in their right mind would lose millions of shillings. You don't even want to lose 100 shillings. How will you lose millions of shillings? It won't happen. So that's part of the whole thing. You have to see it that way, so that you can now see which one or what really matters, so that you can now proceed. And you can see it's a lot of work also. I mean, it's not. Um, there's a lot of stuff that isn't out there already. For example, you can't even chat GPT it. If you chat GPT it, your answers will look sterile, or at least your solutions will look like they're not real. But if it's based on research or information you're getting from the ground, then of course it starts to look and feel real. And that's what partners will pay for. Partners will pay for the real data. You see. So those are the things to think about. I think you've got an opportunity. It's just that now we need to materialize it. The moment those guys release funds, also the demeanor with you will change. Right now they're very slow, they're very awkward, but they'll change. They'll become the opposite of being awkward. They'll become aggressive and insistent. They'll become like that. And depending on them, they can even become threatening. Some people become threatening. So I prefer not to deal with people based on threats or based on emergencies and things like that, because it's harder to succeed when it's like that. So I'm really encouraging you, if you can, you have to talk with times, activities, and and deliverables. You have to talk in those terms, because deliverables have dates, activities have resources, but they also have dates, and then um, uh, time. So time is just your calendar, so we know. Then that way we can do it. Yeah. So those are the challenges. If you had you wanted to say anything on that, Jackie?
Yeah,
Mm.
I'm still telling you, I'll try my best. Send me the minutes so
Yeah.
that I can see how I can start on working on them.
All right then. And then there's the other one, which is now what they sent us, what they sent you. That's current. Let me share my screen. I had downloaded. Yeah, I'll share.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, give me like 5 minutes. I have to go put Troy to bed.
Okay, no worry. All right then. Sound. Okay.
I do other things. I told you I have a really not too much. I just have a really crazy schedule.
You have to prioritize, you do, based on what you know matters. So it's good to have many things, but you just need to now, you have to organize yourself so that you make sure everything is done. Mm.
They all matter, Martin. They all matter.
But that's not planning. Planning means you prioritize. So everything has its time, and then you rank what needs more time, more effort, and things like that. Then resources. Like when I go to Sharia house, these guys are going to start asking for money. There'll be monies for various steps along the way in terms of upgrading. So you see, what I'm saying is, in the real context of things, we plan because of resources and time and effort, and otherwise some things don't get done. Mm. You see what I mean?
Okay.
So, okay, Jackie. So I think that's it. So we can then say we meet next. We try to have these ready so that we have something. Aye,
Okay.
aye, bye.
Bye.
So these are the things you need to do under the actionables. For Jackie, you need to make sure, number one, that the registration document for Chungunzima is complete. Number two, you need to make sure that the program outline for the victims is complete. At least the framework is done. Number three, you need to make sure that the workshop plan for the needs assessment of the victims under the framework of the action of the victims program is done. So that's the workshop plan for needs assessment of the victims. And then number four, you need to make sure you have the, well, I think that's it. So on my side, Martin, if you've shared with me the information for Chumutsima, I'll share it with the people at Sharia House. So my first item is to make sure that I get the um, Chungunzima upgraded to a social enterprise for our purpose. Number two, I'll make sure that the working prototype for the WIKA app, proof of concept, can be demonstrated. And then number three is I'll provide layout documents, drawings to support the prototype. So those are the things I'll give. All right, so that's it.